I think this is an important event, and I know that it's probably perverse to be encouraging, in some ways, to be encouraging people to keep campaigning at a time when the academies are being rolled out more ferociously than ever. But this is definitely not the time to give up. In my view, Ed Balls and Gordon Brown have dug themselves into a hole by committing themselves to expanding the academies before they've thought through the consequences. They've now got no alternative but to keep digging, and also to hope that we'll all go away, which is one reason why we mustn't do that. But I think the intellectual incoherence of their position is now becoming quite clear, and I just want to focus on 5 or 6 key points, I think, that we need to keep making about the arguments that they make and the reality. And the first one is about the status of academies. I mean, I noticed that Ed Balls now says he wants academies to be mainstream schools. He knows that isn't quite the same as a maintained school, but he hopes that people will think it is the same as a maintained school. And he's claimed to me that they're under the same obligations as maintained schools. In fact, that isn't true, of course, because every funding agreement is negotiated individually between the sponsor and DCSF. And also, the point I would make is if they are the same as maintained schools, why do they need to be academies? Because all the outside expertise that one might want to bring in to a school can easily be done even under a community school model by inviting people to join the governing body. The whole point about academies, and at least the Blair government was honest about this, is that they're free to do things that other schools can't. And I don't think that any school should have special freedoms that give them a competitive advantage over other schools, and that all schools should be accountable to their governance arrangements, to their communities, and all their parents, pupils and staff should be offered equal protection under the law. We must keep reinforcing that point, particularly with Ed Balls and with Gordon Brown if we get the chance. My second point is about performance. I mean, I missed the sessions that Terry Wrigley and Roger Tickham have done today, but I mean, I've read much of their work, and I know that all the objective indicators, performance tables, Ofsted, contextual value-added GCSEs, all show that the hyperbole of academies is completely overblown. I mean, interestingly, I did a debate at Teachers TV the other day. One academy head came up to me afterwards and said, actually, the problem we've got is the donors have spun this out of control. I mean, he was basically implying that they knew that their results could not achieve the vast expectations that are placed upon them. And the fact is, there are rapidly improving schools in every single type of category: community school, voluntary aided faith school, whichever school you want to look at. And many of them do have a strong ethos, and I noticed the same head teacher on Thursday night was arguing that his academy had a moral purpose, as if every other school didn't have a moral purpose. But many of these schools do have a strong ethos, moral purpose, and equal aspirations, and must never lose sight of that fact. Obviously, there are strong and weak schools in all sorts of areas, but there's no reason why a school has to be an academy to succeed. And we should never concede that community schools can't be successful without the right leadership, teaching, and vision, and so on. And I think also we need to gather much more evidence about the way academies may affect their neighbouring schools, because this is a powerful argument to counter the suggestion that they will raise standards for everybody simply by introducing competition, and that view is prevalent. But I don't think we have. In fact, I was challenged about this on Thursday night. You can watch the Teachers TV debate on the 19th of March, by the way, at 7 o'clock. I was challenged about it, and actually I felt I didn't have the evidence I needed. I had a few examples, possibly of how admissions had negatively affected local schools, but I think we need much more of that. My next point is about the justification for academies. I mean, the justification is that they have to have a progressive goal, they're in areas of deprivation and deep-seated underachievement, all that's what Ed Balls says. However, the impetus to get 400 and maybe more over the next decade means they're popping up all over the place in areas where neither of these two defences apply. I mean, Frank and I have both been actively involved in campaigning in Camden, an area that has no failing schools and no schools below the government's floor targets, where we're being forced to have an elitist, highly academic academy sponsored by UCL, which wants to specialise simply in academic subjects and manage its own admissions, which seems to have no relation at all to the claim in the 2005 Labour Party manifesto that academies for areas where low aspiration and performance are entrenched. Equally, we see other areas. We see academies being introduced to replace so-called failing schools that weren't failing at all, so they need constant challenge on this point. My next point is about the process. I mean, the process is wholly opaque and undemocratic, there's no doubt about that. I'm not going to defend the competitions in the 2006 Act, but all other proposers of new schools have to enter a competition. Academy sponsors, however, can slip down to something called a preferred sponsor route. I don't know if you've come across that. Which means they don't have to have a competition, they don't have to make available for any real public scrutiny any detail about what their school will be like before the signing of the funding agreement. And if the local authority is not a signatory to that, there's absolutely no reason why anybody in the local community should know that detail before it's signed. And interestingly, our legal challenge in Camden has flushed out the fact that department's own guidance says that the preferred sponsor route shouldn't be followed if there isn't a locally agreed consensus. Well, I've yet to find a locally agreed consensus for an academy. So, I mean, these points need to be made, if necessary, to go down the legal route to do it. Quite apart from anything else, this strikes me as bad politics, because, you know, obviously a lot of very pissed off campaigners who feel their voices aren't being heard all over the country, and many of you probably here represent those. The process is often deceitful, it seems like a backroom deal, and I don't think it sits very easily at all with Gordon Brown's place for democracy and local empowerment of citizens. Admissions are a huge area of concern, and because of the way the academies are meant to be, there's no way of judging how a new academy's admissions will affect other local schools. I know cases where own banding systems have reduced the number of top band children in other schools. There have been cases where academies have run two separate application lists, one for boys and girls, so they keep their intakes balanced. Cases where even the department has had to threaten legal action because academies have refused to take children with special needs. So everything about admissions and academies goes against all the other rhetoric from the government on fairness and choice. There's the issue of governance. I mean, they now say that local authorities can sponsor academies. This simply isn't true. Local authorities have 20% of the governing body of an academy, so the lion's share of the control still lies with the sponsor. And there's absolutely no way that the local authority isn't the co-sponsor, that they have any leverage over the school once it's open. So Ed Walls is actually saying they can have a bit of input during the feasibility stage. After that, absolutely nothing. We're heading to a situation where a sizable number of schools will now be managed centrally by the Secretary of State. I don't believe anything has properly explored what that will mean in the long term, how those schools might be used in the hands of a different political party. One that might want to introduce selection viability, easily done. All you'd have to do is renegotiate the funding agreements. Finally, diversity. I'm getting tired but used to being accused of being a dinosaur or a Luddite on this issue. It is, however, possible to be for diverse forms of education, but in a fair, locally agreed context, which doesn't require diversity of institution, with each school having different freedoms with which they can compete against each other. We need to define what we mean by diversity and how that can be presented as a modern, radical, progressive policy. Thank you very much.